Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I put my recorder on here, Rick. So maybe I sent you three questions there. Maybe you can just just
Yeah.
share a little bit. Just I'll just kind of record and see what I can use. Okay.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So do you want me to kind of give some context then, as far as
Yeah,
how
yeah, a little bit time wise, just so I know, and just about your background and how it kind of worked out that way. Doesn't have to be a lot, but just give me some information, then try to answer those questions.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been on staff here at Compelled Church for almost 27 years now, and so Pastor Nate planted the church in 1996. And then I joined him a year after that, and was just in an internship role. So I was just helping out for the summer with youth ministry, children's ministry. And it worked out where after that summer I could stay on and be part-time here and help them with the church plant. And so through that, then kind of fast forward through those years, I just have been in a supportive role with him, with youth ministry, children's ministry, and young adults ministry. And then a few years into that, I moved away from student ministry and then started doing more adult ministry, small groups, and then finally moved into worship ministry, which I'm doing now, and then also kind of functioning as an executive pastor, where some of the different departments and staff report to me. So now, like kids ministry, our student ministry, and then I'm still over our worship ministry and things like that, and then helping with staff meetings and the array of things that kind of pop up with that. And so I've been in that role now for it's been almost probably 12 years now that I've been doing that particular role here as far as executive pastor. So that's kind of the history of it.
Lots of time gone by already, bro. That's incredible.
It really is. It's pretty unbelievable when you look back and go almost 27 years. It's a lifetime for sure. My only adult experience in the church world and as pastoring has been Compelled Church, and so it's a unique perspective that I have as far as being in one place for an extended period of time.
And you kind of grew up in terms of ministry, or developed in ministry just as the church grew up, kind of as the church developed too. The whole kind of went hand in hand, didn't it?
It did. It was actually a real blessing for me because I was so young. I was 21 coming into ministry, and not just I was young, but I also I was not newly saved. I had been saved for a few years and growing in discipleship and things, but I was really new to the idea of pastoral ministry. I was just kind of seeing what it was like,
Right.
And I felt a calling, but I wasn't sure. And so it was a blessing to me to be able to grow in my own faith and my own leadership with the church as it grew, So as it kind of grew in size and we saw God's blessing, every single time that happened, or as that happened, it called me to a greater level of discipleship and leadership, but it was progressive, so it really helped me be able to grow with the church. And I felt overwhelmed a lot, but it was attainable as well at the same time. So,
yep. Right. So, yeah, just look at those questions now. Just kind of generally, I think the three questions that were there. Just
yeah. So for me, serving with Nate this long in one spot, it really, I look at it and I feel that it's a huge blessing because, in any leadership role, especially a supportive one, I think that probably the greatest thing that has to happen is an understanding of your leader's heart and vision and purpose, and really seeing and knowing what God has called them to do and placed on their heart as far as the vision and direction of the church. And then the big question, I think, then for those of us who would be in a supportive role is, one, is that a vision and a purpose I can give my life to? And then do I fully understand it so that if I'm going to give my life to it, I can do the best I can to support that vision and that purpose? And so longevity, I think, is key in that because, in any leadership position, especially when there's a dual role or a team, unity is so valuable. And so it's helped us stay in unity, so to speak. And then it's because we know each other so well and been together so long, it's given us a good gauge of understanding that, there's seasons where maybe our directions need to be realigned, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I have some things maybe that I have some ideas and that, and I'm going at them, but they're not counter to what Nate's heart is for the church, but they don't necessarily support what his heart is for the church in the best way. And so then I have to go back to the drawing board and go, all right, let me realign with your vision. And so sometimes that's, it's difficult sometimes as an individual, but it's that piece of submission there that is doing it. So it's been a huge blessing because not only do I get to serve alongside him as my pastor, but that longevity, the relational side of our life is a huge benefit, that we are such good friends as well because we've done so much life together. Our families have grown up together, all those things. And so a lot of times that has been a benefit to us in leadership because it doesn't take a lot for us to be on the same page because we understand each other.
Right.
And that has been really, really helpful and a strength to us, in leadership as we go. And probably more so as my leadership scope, I guess, has expanded as far as influence or voice or those things. We've been together so long that we speak the same language in a sense, as far as vision and
Right.
purpose and that. And so that's been really helpful. So the second question, is that good for the first one? Does that feel like?
Yeah, that's good. And of course, that's one of the reasons I decided when I was doing this topic, because I don't know that many people or assistants that have worked so long with one person. I mean, you don't, that doesn't happen too often. You know what I'm saying?
It is true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good what you shared. Just keep going.
So the second question then was, how do I look at my spiritual growth
Right.
as a leader through this? And so just so I answer your question correctly, are you just saying what are some of my practices as far as I'm committed to growth spiritually? Or
No, I just saying just a general kind of thing. How it's helped. I don't think you need to talk about I learned how to pray more or something like that. Just I don't know, just whatever.
Yeah. So and reflecting on that, that's kind of what I thought. And so in thinking about how to kind of put that into words, I really think whether it be the longevity of my time here or just even if I was just jumping into this role now, I think that I guess the call would be the same. I would look at it as far as spiritual growth, that through the years what I've realized is that there's a great responsibility on me in my position to be disciplined in making sure that I am growing spiritually and that I am leaning into not just spiritual growth, but also leadership growth, which I know a lot of those in the church world are connected. But I was struck early on. At first, it was just solely a mentoring relationship between Nate and I. I didn't know anything, so I'd go to him for everything. And hey,
Right.
What do you think about this? But as we grew together and I had some experience underneath me, that relationship started to change, where Nate then was in turn coming back to me and saying, "Hey, here's a few thoughts. What do you think about them?" And asking me those things. And then at first that was really intimidating, when I was younger. And then the next level of that was kind of that. I remember the first season where he asked, "What do you think about this?" I kind of gave my thoughts. and then he actually followed through with my suggestion, and it was something, pertaining to the whole church. And it's funny, in that moment, it did make me prideful of going like, oh man, that was a great thought. He did what I said. It actually humbled me and challenged me to go like, I better really make sure that things I say are not just opinionated, but that I am growing spiritually and growing as a leader. That the suggestions or the content that I bring to the conversation is biblical, is godly, is sound wisdom and leadership. And so there's an aspect of that responsibility that I've taken on of, I'm not just here to grow my faith on a personal level. That is first and foremost important. But then there's another aspect of it where my role and the calling that's on my life is that I also need to make sure that I'm growing spiritually and in leadership, because God has put me in a place where there's a dependence on some of those things when my voice is in the conversation, or those leadership decisions or direction and vision of the church. And so that's been real interesting. Some of the things that I think that I've had to grow through the most is probably the submission aspect. Submission is all through our faith and everything we do. It's cornerstone or key to our faith, but then there's also this idea of it growing in our relationships. And I think that spiritually growing in submission has been probably the key for me, because, as I mentioned before, like sometimes I have a opinion, a will, a desire, and sometimes it doesn't always go that way. And so in those moments, am I going to be mature enough in my faith to submit to my leadership? And not just in the room, but then out.
Yeah, right.
When I'm frustrated.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I think that's one of the challenges. Of course, that's the challenge of, let's say, being kind of the assistant or the executive. But what I'm hearing too is your responsibility has grown. It's like you, in a way, you sense just as much responsibility for the church as Nate does. You know what I mean? It's like you sense that responsibility on your shoulders, even though, let's say, he's kind of like the number one or the first violin, we'd say. But hey, you carry, that responsibility has grown. And I think that's what I want to bring across to guys. This is not just some little game, you know what I mean, where you're just kind of like a yes man. I mean, like, the responsibility grows.
Yeah, and it's a blending of it's a real interesting blending in our role where you're to use those terms first and second, lead pastor, executive, or whatever terminology.
Yeah.
It's a real interesting blend of personalities as well, because Pastor Nate and myself, we have a ton in common, but we are completely different in personalities.
And I know both of your personalities, right? But it's a great combination because, they say opposites do attract, right?
Yeah. That's very true. That's very true.
That's great.
So it's been a real blessing for us. At times, nothing's perfect, right? At times, our personalities kind of, there's a little conflict in there, but that's also, it's life, and working through that. But a lot of times, there's so much complement to each other. Right. And help. And I always tease and say, Nate's always like, let's go. And I'm like, hold on, let's think about this.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a good balance,
Right, and Nate appreciates that too. I know he appreciates that. So that's all part of it.
Yes.
That's a part of it.
Yes. Yeah.
So the third question, I don't know, I just threw that in there because, I don't know why, but whatever.
No, I think that's good. I think that's probably, actually, maybe specifically for the purpose of this, with those in kind of a second role, that's probably the question that rolls around in our heads the most when we're in this second position, like, what does it look like? And is this what I'm to do forever? And, can I have aspirations to be a lead pastor? Is, all those things. And,
right.
And so I think I'll speak from my own personal experiences. I have always been happy in my position here as kind of in a second role. There was a season that I reflect on where this was probably about 15 years ago. Maybe it was was a decent amount of time back, but I felt just frustrated. I was unsure why, but I felt frustrated in where I was at. There was some frustrations in leadership, like between Nate and I, and is this
Right.
undercurrent? And I was
Sure.
like, huh. And so I was trying to discern. All right, is this just growth? Like, is this like growing pains of like the Lord's leading me somewhere else, and I've got to kind of pray through this and discern.
Right.
And so I actually really did think about that quite a bit and pray about it. I was praying about the potential of planting a church, and so for me, the testimony of that story is that in prayer, I really felt strongly that the Lord spoke to me and just said that for me that I was making decisions not based on health, and so my frustration was driving me to go like, well, it must be time for me to go somewhere else.
Right.
And so I really prayed about that and was convicted that it was actually a growth period for me, and I was interpreting it as maybe it was time for me to move on, but it was actually pivotal for me to grow through that, to actually stay where I'm at,
Right.
and be able to serve better. And so from that, I honestly have never felt a call to go out and to lead, to become a lead pastor.
Right.
I've learned to understand my giftings, my strengths, where I function best as far as personality, and my role. I really, my personality lends itself really well to this, what I'm doing. But at the same time, I guess what I wrestle with in my own life, in my own heart, is that I never want to let the comfort of my situation
Right.
close my ears to the call of God
Right.
to do something else.
Yeah, and what you're saying is this is where you're planted right now, but you never know. I mean, nobody knows. Nate doesn't know. I don't know sometimes, what's going to happen in the future.
Yes,
God
absolutely.
leads, right?
Yeah, and I've had a few times I've been called by, our district.
Right.
Simply just saying, hey, there's a church that's open, just thinking about you.
Yep,
just want you to pray about it. And I guess what I've determined to do in those moments is that I never say no. I always want to take those and genuinely present them to the Lord and say, all right, Lord, if this is the opportunity that you're calling me to, I want to be open to that. So I really want discernment and revelation in that as I pray through. And I've never really felt a release to say, that's it, go do that. And so I love what I'm doing. I love where I'm at, but I don't want that to ever hold me back from doing what God has called me to do. So I guess that's my place, is just to honestly bring those before the Lord every time an opportunity comes, and make sure that my choice is not based on my own comfort and desire, but is based on what I really feel the Lord is leading me at this season of my life. And so I want to be willing to go, but I'm pretty happy to stay too.
Right, I understand.
It's a good balance.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, lead pastors have those same issues too, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, so that's all part of when you're in full-time ministry. There's always opportunities, and sometimes we get calls, and we just need to know what to do, Well, this is really helpful, Rick. I probably won't. I mean, I might only grab a few sentences out of this thing because I'm writing some other thoughts, and just trying to encourage people that are more in their capacity. Even sometimes we have a lot of churches here. They have lay people who might be the kind of like the executive pastors, even though they don't use the term like that here, but they have that same kind of role to assist and be a part of the team. But of course, obviously, I think I'll conclude this by saying I'm sure that your voice is really important for Nate. You know what I mean? So a lot of ways, I don't think you feel like you're always the second voice. I don't think you feel that way. Probably more like in the team, right? And you have influence also too.
Yeah, he always says that to me. He always says, "Your voice is my voice. When you speak, it's me speaking."
Right.
And sometimes I tell him, "Well, I don't know if I want all that."
Yes, you don't want. Sometimes you're not sure you want all that responsibility, right? Yeah.
Let's not go overboard. you know.
Right. Well, there were a few AG churches I've known, and maybe even here in Germany, where they talk about the double edge leadership, both team leadership, both together. You don't really know who's in charge.
Yeah.
There's not very many situations like that, and I guess they've worked out somewhat. But it seems like it's always better to have one that really kind of everybody knows, hey, he's the lead guy. But everybody knows too in your church that that you're very much involved and you're one of the main leaders. So
Yeah.
Okay, well, great, Rick. Anything else after I ask those questions? Anything to conclude with, or any biblical perspective? Maybe there's something. Hey, like that's always been an encouraging for me in the scriptures, or something. Maybe a scripture, or a particular person in the Bible that's always kind of encouraged you in your ministry.
So I mean, the token answer is Jesus.
Okay, well, yeah, all right, yeah, right.
Gospels, and so I just think, obviously his heart and all that, but I think, so outside of that, I do think, I do like the relationship, like First, Second Timothy. I really like those, reading those, because you have a mentor speaking to a mentee.
Oh yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah.
An elder pastor speaking to a younger pastor, and it's just such practical, sound doctrine and truth and principles, and so that's always been a place where I just really love that, and I love, because in turn, looking at Nate as my lead pastor, and I'm on staff here, but that role, it doesn't stop there. Then there's those that I'm over in staff that then I'm pouring into, and that relationship of mentoring that pours down. And I love the end of that where Paul says, I've fought the good fight, I've run the race, I've finished the race, I've kept the faith. And I don't know, I guess that's an aspiration of mine, that at the end of my life that'd be said about me, that I fought the fight as best I could. I stayed in the race and kept running, and I kept the faith through it all, and now there's a prize in heaven. It's
right.
It's a great high calling and a wonderful way to be remembered, I think. And so I think that really does come from loving the Lord and pouring into the people around you. So I don't know, it's always been an encouragement to me.
Yeah, this is really great, Rick. So thanks for just sharing your thoughts here. I'm just going to shut this off a second here. That's what I'm going to do.